A flight from London to Singapore has hit severe turbulence, hurling passengers and luggage onto the ceiling, leaving one man dead and dozens more injured from the terrifying incident. 56 Australians were on board the Singapore Airlines 777, which made an emergency landing in Bangkok last night.
A 73-year-old British man died after suffering a suspected heart attack in the incident. 30 others were injured, with 18 of them taken to hospital, including 7 with critical injuries. Let's go straight to our reporter Jessica Rendell. Jess, good morning to you. What do we know?
Well, Lisa, we're hearing that sudden extreme turbulence was the cause of this incident that happened on that Singapore Airlines flight from London. Now, this occurred at around 10 hours into the journey over the Irrawaddy Basin in Myanmar. And the plane was at about 37,000 feet in the air when this sudden extreme turbulence occurred. Now, we have heard an account from a 28-year-old student who was on board that flight, and he said that the plane had started tilting upwards and shaking, and that's when he started to brace for impact, and he described what happened next as a very sudden and dramatic drop. Now, he said people who were seated and didn't have their seatbelts on were being thrown into the ceiling of the plane, many hitting their heads on the overhead compartments, and many suffered critical head injuries from that incident there. So it sounds like quite the dramatic and terrifying experience to have to go through on that flight there. Now, at that point, that's when the pilot declared a medical emergency and diverted the plane that was meant to land in Singapore to Thailand, and safely landed it at Suvarnabhumi International Airport in Bangkok. Now, there were 211 passengers on board. 56 of those were Australians. We have heard from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade that 8 Australians were hospitalised, and they are working to contact and reach out to their families. Now, Singapore Airlines has offered their condolences to the family of the 73-year-old British man who died as a result of a heart attack on board this flight, and also have apologised to travellers and the crew for what they described as a traumatising experience. Now, Boeing, the maker of this plane, has also reached out to Singapore Airlines and offered their full compliance with the investigations that will be ongoing now after this incident. And Singapore Airlines says that they're working with authorities not only in Thailand but also in Singapore and London to try and piece together just what happened on this flight, Lisa.
Yeah, it would have been pretty scary in there. Thanks, Jess.
The first flights evacuating Australians from unrest in New Caledonia have arrived in Brisbane last night. Our reporter Antonia O'Flaherty is in Brisbane for us this morning. Antonia, good morning. How many Australians have made it home?
Good morning, Michael. Well, 84 Australians were on 2 military transport planes operated by the Royal Australian Air Force last night that arrived here at Brisbane International Airport. Now, there were also 30 other passengers on those flights from countries including Canada, and there were also some Americans. Now, this morning, Defence Minister Pat Conroy has defended why there were some other passengers on those flights, saying that during crises like this, they need to work with other countries to repatriate their nationals so that in future crises Australia can benefit from allies who would be willing to bring home Aussies during times of need like this. Now, so there's obviously around 84 Australians that made it home here last night. You can see vision from when they arrived here at Brisbane Airport. It was just scenes of relief, and it was quite emotional really. People got off the plane, they raised their hands to the sky. They were just so relieved to touch down here on safe soil and then see their families when they got through to the arrivals gate in Brisbane here. One of the passengers the ABC spoke to just talked about, how much relief they had seeing their family. Here's what they had to say.
Happy just to see my family and relieved, but yeah, like I was saying before, it's quite sad what's going on over there. It feels all pretty awful and pretty senseless. So yeah, very happy to see my son. It feels like he's grown another foot.
So obviously there's been significant unrest in New Caledonia since last Monday, and 300 Australians have indicated that they want to return home to Australia. So DFAT has told the remaining 216 Australians that the French government is hoping to repatriate on evacuation flights today, as early as today. However, the Australian government has also said that they're on standby. They're hoping to assist with any future flights if they can get that permission to get Aussies home.
OK, Antonia, appreciate the update. Thank you.
Let's have a look at the rest of the news. And Australia's top science agency says building a nuclear power plant in Australia would likely take at least 15 years and cost at least twice as much as renewable energy solutions. A CSIRO report found building a new large-scale nuclear power plant in Australia would cost at least $8.5 billion, double that of wind and solar projects backed by storage and transmission. The federal opposition has called for nuclear power in Australia, but it's yet to release the details of its policy.
The Northern Territory Police Minister says standalone curfew legislation is only one tool to fight crime in the top end. The laws that passed the NT Parliament last night will allow the Police Commissioner to call a 3-day curfew and ask the Police Minister for a 7-day extension. They were introduced following a snap youth curfew in Alice Springs earlier this year.
Unions and employer groups will today front the Fair Work Commission to argue for a wage rise for the nation's lowest paid workers. The Australian Council of Trade Unions is pushing for a 5% pay lift to the minimum wage and more money for those in industries it says are lagging behind, like early childhood education and care. Employer groups want a rise of between 2 and 2.8%.
The Federal Health Minister will ban replicas of Ozempic and other weight loss drugs after an ABC investigation found they were being illegally manufactured in Australia and exported overseas. The semaglutide drugs were designed for diabetes, but their popularity in weight loss has led to serious shortages. The government says at least 20,000 Australians are taking the pharmacy-made medication. The ban takes effect from October.
A tunnel boring machine in the Snowy 2.0 hydropower project, which spent more than a year bogged underground, is stuck again. The 2,500-tonne machine, nicknamed Florence, is now wedged in hard rock. A specialist team is being brought in to try to dislodge it using high-pressure water jets. It's the latest in a series of problems plaguing the project. It's had significant cost and time blowouts already.
Let's see what the markets have been up to overnight. The Dow up ever so slightly. Our futures up as well. The Aussie dollar just under 67 US cents. Brent crude down slightly in value, and gold at $2,421 US dollars an ounce this morning.
Elvis Presley's granddaughter is attempting to halt the sale of Graceland, the late singer's Memphis home. It's amid a dispute over an unpaid loan. Riley Keogh, who inherited the property after the death of Lisa Marie Presley last year, says her mother's signature on a loan document putting the compound up as collateral was forged. Elvis bought Graceland mansion in 1957 and lived there until he died. It was opened as a tourist attraction in 1982.